I think you could see not really a future of America being a United States of America anymore because of this breakdown you're seeing politically. It really takes us in a bad direction with how a lot of these guys with the military-industrial complex behind them are not for the people that elected them. They're making decisions for their own power and for whatever power base supports them. You know, we can have these conversations on Rumble. We can have these conversations on X. Romans couldn't do that. Their world was just disappearing and going away. So we actually have the ability to do something about that. There's actually a lot of hope in me right now as a dad of 3 little girls that, like, I can do something about this. I can change this.
These people who now want to equate Donald Trump with all of those people say, well, Donald Trump's just going to take over. We'll never have a republic left. He's a threat to democracy. He's a living embodiment of Hitler. Oh, I've been around Trump, but I'm like, I don't think that he is a Julius Caesar. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Chad Prather Show. It is always a pleasure when you guys tune in, whether you're watching or listening. I'm thankful for you. I was out on the road this past weekend doing a live show. I was in Missouri, and it always amazes me. I'm fascinated by how many people come by, shake my hand, meet me, and say that they're listening to the show, and they tell me what time of day they're listening to it, where they are. Usually they're driving to work or what their routine is. So that's, you know, the fact that you allow me to come in and talk to you, get into your brain a little bit while you're going about your day-to-day. It's a very humbling thing. I'm very thankful for that. And again, we try to bring this thing to you. We try to bring you relevant guests, relevant conversations, and stuff that can impact your life and maybe make you think a little bit. And, you know, have a little fun along the way. It's always a good time. But I want to encourage you, please, please, please. It helps us so much when you go and leave a rating and review. 5 stars, that's what we deserve. You know we do. And with the review, say whatever you want to say. We're reading them, we're checking them out, and they are relevant to us, trust me. And we're thankful for this family. We're heading on a decade of doing this show, and I'm just excited about what the future holds. I got some great episodes coming up and some great guests today, not the least of which we're going to have a good time. And I want to also, while I'm encouraging you to do things, another action item is head over to watchchad.com. That is where all the fun stuff is. You can find my live schedule. It gets busy from here. I am going to be somewhere pretty much every weekend, multiple cities a week for the rest of this year. We're already booking out into 2025. We're headed up to Alaska in a week. Going to do a couple of shows up there. It's going to be fun. Going to Alaska, Shy, that's like going to a whole other country. I don't know if you know that or not. That's like a whole other place, dude. But we're looking forward to it, especially there in the first part of September when the weather will cool off, because it's about 120,000 degrees here in Texas. So I'm looking forward to all these things. I want to see all your faces. And I want to shake your hand, and I want you to tell me about how this show is relevant to your life in your day-to-day. So come talk to me. You know, the other thing is I have people who say, you know, we saw you at the airport or we saw you someplace and we didn't want to come over and say hi, or we didn't want to interrupt you. Interrupt me. Come over. I promise you. I do this for you. I mean, I do this to make a lot of money, but that failed. So I'm doing it for you now, okay? I'm doing it for you guys. I got paid 58 cents yesterday on Facebook for a very, very good video that I put out about a chick flick I was forced to go see. Anyway, has your girlfriend made you go see it yet, Shy? The End of Us? Have you seen it? She went to see it without you. Okay. I'm telling you, bro, I promise you there is a deep-seated seed of hate inside of her for you. After watching that movie, that was girl poison. It was girl poison. I read the book a little while back because listen, the biology books have been rendered obsolete in this day and age. You have to do the research on women where you can. And Colleen, whatever her name is, who wrote the book, I had to do the research. And then I went to see the movie, and I promise you, they gave every woman on the planet a reason to hate men, because you'll find out. You'll find out. Joining me today, enough about that. Joining me today, a guy that I find fascinating. I love what he does. I love his voice. I love the information that he puts out there. He's one of those guys that you see him and you're like, hey, he's just a big dumb jock, right? You would never expect this guy to know all the stuff that he knows, but I promise you, he is a wealth of information, just encyclopedic on certain topics we're going to get into today, and I think we're going to have some fun. Jeremy Ryan Slate, welcome to the program, brother. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's funny to say that too. I used to be a competitive powerlifter in my 20s, so I remember like sitting in grad school wearing my Rush Limbaugh Club Gitmo T-shirt while asking way too many questions in history class. So I appreciate it, man.
Now you have let me get all of this straight because again, people see me and people who know me know my education. I'm overeducated for what I do. I went to several universities, did a lot of different things. People who know, they know, but they see this and they don't expect it, right? And I read that about you, about being a power lifter. Seen pictures of you and your wife, your beautiful family, your kids, and I mean, here's this dude. He's all jacked, you know. I mean, I'm like, okay, all right. He's not just one of these little talking heads. But your education, your undergrad, tell me first of all, what all you studied, because your undergrad was what? It was a couple things, and then you went to Oxford, right?
Yeah.
I almost said Cambridge. You went to Oxford, and then you came back and you got a master's degree at Seton Hall.
Yeah, so I went to Seton Hall for undergrad, and
okay.
I don't recommend anybody do the college experience quite like I did, because it was kind of like I took a bunch of things I was really interested in, and lucky enough I was able to graduate. Like my grades were good, trust me, but like I took logic, I took deontological ethics, I took a lot of things like that because I was interested in how do people think, you know, how do societies function. And I was a Catholic theology major in undergrad, which it's a little bit weird now, I'll be honest with you. In 2005 or 2005 to 9 when I was in school, it's a lot of Marxism they have you study in Catholic theology now, which is a little weird. But
why is that? What's the logic there?
They bring it in through Catholic social teaching, and they're having you read like people like James Cone and Marx himself. So it was quite interesting and a little off-putting in some ways. But I got to my senior year, and my advisor is like, you know, you're like 2 credits or 2 classes short of a double major and 3 classes short of a triple major, right? I'm like, I am? Okay, I just took things that interested me. So I took the additional 2 courses I needed. I ended up double majoring in Catholic theology and Judaism just because I was interested. And as you mentioned, I did a program at Oxford University where we studied the work of Lewis and Chesterton and people like that, and ended up actually getting my master's after that at Seton Hall in, I say the Roman Empire because it's easier for people to understand, but I actually studied the propaganda of Augustus Caesar and how he actually convinced people to worship him as a god.
See, that's amazing because I read that, you know, and it's like, okay, so you got a master's degree in Roman emperor worship, basically.
Yeah.
That's
my university didn't have that major, by the way. It was basically like they had gotten rid of classics, and I convinced them to let me bring the classics professor along with me into the grad school and kind of like create my own major.
Hey guys, I'm a proud American. You're a proud American, and it's great to be a proud American. But let me tell you something. You know your rights, and you're prepared if somebody ever comes after you. If they come after your family, you know, I'm pretty sure you're ready. But I want to make sure you're completely ready. And I want you to go over and make sure you got everything you need that's essential to living and surviving at My Patriot Supply. Right now, their mega 3-month emergency food kit is going to come jam-packed with 33 varieties of filling and delicious foods. So not only does it include, you know, incredible things like one of my favorites is the chicken-flavored rice, the Italian spaghetti, old-fashioned Italian spaghetti. And it's so good, and it's got the cheese and broccoli soup. Now I'm getting hungry. Listen, you're going to get the bonus protein kit with the diced beef, the chicken, the 3 varieties of beans, plus 9 different fruits, vegetables, and snacks. All in all, listen, the emergency food kit is going to provide 2,500 calories a day. I mean, it's enough to keep you well-fed and ready for anything. Now, the way I see it is it's my duty as an American to protect my family without waiting on handouts, and that starts with the food you can depend on for up to 25 years. Go to preparewithchad.com and save $300 on your mega 3-month emergency food kit. No special promo code, nothing like that. Just go to preparewithchad.com, save $300 on your kit. That's preparewithchad.com. See, I respect and love that because, you know, unlike these kids these days who are doing gender studies or underwater basket weaving, you know, is the fun little stereotypical thing to say. I went to school, like I wanted to study what I wanted to study. So like you, I was taking classes in systematic theology. I was taking, classes in hermeneutics and things like that. And people were like, what are you ever going to do with this science of Bible interpretation kind of things? I was doing these kind of things. And I was like, it interests me. Like I want to literally learn rather than just sit through a class, where you have to do your basic stuff like sociology, where you've got some liberal professor who's telling us that language was an accident that evolved and this kind of nonsense BS. And I want to go out there and I want to, really truly find out the way people thought historically. And so, and what shaped us for today and the development of Western civilization, all these things. So people always thought I was crazy. They always said, you're getting an education that you'll never use, but it actually has served me pretty well. These days, you got a podcast that it used to be, you had the Command Your Brand. You still do
Command Your Brand is the name of our company. My podcast
Yeah.
for like 8 years was called the Create Your Own Life Show, because we were talking to like best-selling authors, athletes, people like that. And then 2020, the world kind of shifted dramatically. And my wife's like, you complain about this stuff privately. I think it's time to start actually talking to people about it. And, I had grassroots campaign for Ron Paul in 2008 and 2012. So like I'd always quietly been very political, and it just kind of felt like the time to start having conversations that matter.
Yeah. And I love that, because what you've done, and I'll talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial side of things. You go out, because we're going to talk about the Roman Empire. Yeah. Trust me, we're going to talk about the Roman Empire. I've got questions. I've been thinking about the Roman Empire for weeks now, every day. But you as a thought leader, as somebody who is a true influencer, somebody that brings things to the forefront, you go out and find the people who, for the lack of better terms, you find the people that are hustling. And then you kind of figure out what it is, that common denominator for the people who are making a difference, right? Those people that are the movers and the shakers in the world. You've done this long enough, the podcasting, the leading, the coaching, the speaking, the talking, all these things. What is driving our culture right now? Are voices, let me put it this way, are voices relevant anymore? I mean, I know you've got the Joe Rogans of the world, and you've got the Jordan Petersons of the world, and you have the Tucker Carlsons and the Bill Maher's, and name your really big people that are out there. But is it even worthwhile anymore for the rank and file to try to build a platform and use their voice anymore? How hard is that to do in this day and age when so many people are trying to punch through the smoke?
Well, I think it's knowing the right places to do it, because I think there is a lot of value from people hearing from individual people, and especially business people, frankly. Because if you look at it, I saw a post today, they put Tim Walz and Kamala Harris up, and they said, these people have actually never held a job in the private sector. And they put up, Trump's career journey alongside that. And, he's been in the private sector for a long time. And I think the important part is the voices out there need to be people that have lived life and worked in the world and actually had experience in that. But the problem is there's not many places you can do that. And that's why I'm so passionate about working in podcasts and working in new media places. Like, sure, we're on YouTube, but Rumble's a better place to be right now to have these conversations to actually get things out there. I think for the right people, especially people with a business background, you need to be out there talking about this, right? Because taxes are the thing affecting you. Hiring are the thing affecting you. Inflation. And regular people need to hear it from people that are actually running a business and trying to make a profit out there.
Yeah, those are the things that fascinate me. I want to find, we were joking before we started on here, because with the Roman Empire, when suddenly that thing became, everybody was talking about, men are thinking about the Roman Empire every day, and your wife told you that you suddenly became relevant. I said, well, that's sort of what happened with me with the little bag of cocaine at the White House. Everybody called me because they thought I was a subject matter expert. And of course, we made big jokes out of that. But I want to find the people that are relevant. I want to find the people that can speak into my life because they have some substance that are there. They've lived it, you've been into fitness. You've talked to fitness people. You got relevant expertise in that area. I don't want to talk to some fat slob who's eating pizza at 11:30 at night watching the Late Show. I want to find the guy who maybe he did that and he turned his life around and fixed it. And so finding those unique perspectives is great. The question is, how do we find those voices, and how do we test the spirits and kind of find the voices that we can trust? You know what I mean? With so many people that are out there, have you thought about that?
I think it's honestly, it's just keeping to be what you know to be true, because I think there's a lot of people, especially on X, that try to go with things that are very, I don't know, charged, right? Because their goal is to get more impressions and get views and whatever it might be. But I think it's to be honest to what you know is to be true, and to actually say, like, am I adding to the noise or am I helping people? My whole
Yeah.
goal is I want to make people more causative, because the entire world around them is telling them they're a fact, right? This is happening to you. That's happening to you. This is happening to you. And I think for a lot of people, sure, maybe not have a big audience now, but you're going to have a time to shine at some point if you just stay true to what that is and continue to talk about what you know in your area of expertise.
Yeah. And you're on the same internet I'm on. You mentioned X. I mean, I jump on Instagram, X. I see these various, man on the street interviews or people's takes on where we are politically or culturally in our country and even in our world. And I hear some of the wildest things, some of the wildest ideas, and we've kind of normalized insanity. My big platform is we've lost our ability not only to have common sense but to think critically, and just to see the insanity that's out there that's being pushed around as something that's normal. Do you see that, and does that frustrate you at all?
It does, because I think at the same time, you have to realize, is this getting us closer to a solution? And I think a lot of times, if we're just picking fights on the internet, it's not really solving anything. And we have enough craziness out there in our world with, what we've gone through in 2020 and what we've gone through in the last election and what we're going through in this election. Like, the last month, what we've lived through feels like a year-long news cycle. So I think you have to understand, am I just adding to the noise or am I helping people? And I think oftentimes a lot of people are just concerned about their own celebrity, and I just don't think that helps anybody.
Hey, I just got off the phone with my buddy Trey over at United Patriot Coin. They got something new going on that I think is pretty cool. A lot of you have seen that one of their gold and silver Patriot packs. I've promoted them for a long time on my social media. Their packs come with those 8 individual coins in the bars at a low price point, so they're a great way to start your precious metal stack. It's a great way to get into this. It's a fun hobby, but it's also a valuable hobby, and it'll also add some barter power to your bug out bags. So like everything else these days, man, the Patriot packs, they're evolving. And now the 1 ounce silver rounds included in the packs can actually be snapped apart into the 4 separate sections. I've shown you that before. It's really cool how that happens and how that works. It's like having a $20 bill that you can tear apart and pay for things in increments of $5, except it's made of pure investment quality silver. Now, with the crazy election season that's going on, multiple fronts of wars, and inflation that just doesn't seem like it's going to go away anytime soon, the demand for gold and silver is obviously on the rise. That's why the Patriot Pack has become popular as a way for people to stockpile gold and silver so their buying power is protected no matter what comes our way. And man, stuff is coming our way. Each pack includes 8 pieces of small denomination silver and gold, so you'll always be prepared. And with that snap-apart silver, it's even better, man. It's really cool. So if you use promo code CHAD10, pay attention to what I said, CHAD10 at checkout, you're going to get 10% off your first Patriot Pack. It's peace of mind that's worth the effort. Visit the website, UnitedPatriotCoin.com, or you can order by phone. You call them 844-202-7834. Be one of the first people to get the new Patriot Pack with the snap-apart silver ounces. UnitedPatriotCoin.com. Use promo code CHAD10. No, I agree with you. I said I've actually been kind of slack on social media the last couple of weeks because I said I can't keep up. Between doing this show and live entertainment, traveling, various things that I have to keep up with. At the same time, I'm a father. All these different things, being in a relationship, and I'm like, I can't keep up with the news cycle. It's just it's bombarding us. So.
It's wild, man, because if you look at it, like for me, I was in the last month, I've been in Milwaukee, I was in Austin, I was in St. Paul, I was in Phoenix, I was in Vegas. I have 3 little kids. And in the last month, what have we lived through? Somebody tried to kill the former president. The current president isn't running, but for some reason he could still be in office. They've changed the candidate. Like, what has happened in the last month is insane. How do you follow it all?
You can't. And I mean, that's the thing. I want to read this to you. I'm looking it up here. My good friend and fellow podcast host, Larry Alex Taunton, he's a long-time
I follow him on YouTube.
Dude, Larry is a good friend, and you guys would love each other. He made a post yesterday. I want to find this thing real quick about the Roman Empire, and he retweets so many things. I'm going to have to give him a hard time about this, but he doesn't quite understand how social media works. So he keeps retweeting stuff that's already been done. But I want to find this post that he made yesterday, and I'm going to be mad if he's taking it down or I can't find it anymore. But he was just talking about the similarities between where we are today versus the collapse of Rome. He said, near the collapse of Rome, women were having very few children, society worshiping sex and physical perfection, no longer valued families. Infanticide was so widespread it became a capital offense. The concern wasn't so much moral as practical. The Roman frontiers needed men on the walls, and the declining population was alarming for Rome's defenses. So bad was this problem that the Senate recalled Rome's legions from Britannia in 407 AD, abandoning the island province to defend Rome itself. It was too late. Rome was sacked in 410 and collapsed in 476. Is he pretty accurate so far?
So some of that's true and some of it's not. Because I think you need to understand, like, a lot of the damage to Rome was done when it was a pagan empire. But actually by 406, it's actually become a Christian empire. And under Theodosius in 380, it's the official religion of Rome becomes Christianity. So things have actually improved dramatically. But what you've seen is through the 2nd century and the 3rd century, so much damage has been done. You kind of get to the point of no return, right? And the point of no return for me is after the son of Marcus Aurelius, who's Commodus in 192. And he's hated so much that they actually tried twice to kill him. The first time he's poisoned, and they basically get him so drunk that he throws up the poison. The second time, they actually pay a wrestler to strangle him to death, a guy named Maximus, which is funny because it is a similar name to the guy in the movie, though it doesn't happen like in the movie. But anyway, things get really bad after that. In the 3rd century, you have somewhere around like 47 different guys in the 3rd century claim to be emperor. You have inflation is out of control. By the time of Diocletian in 284, you're at 15,000% inflation. And then you also have this 15,000% by 284. And then you have this massive immigration problem, because what happened is in 212, Emperor Caracalla takes all of the free people living in the provinces and grants them citizenship. So you have 30 million people that get citizenship overnight. That's one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that emperors had realized they could seize power by having an army behind them. So you have this thing happen called the barrack emperors. Basically, it comes from an idea of military barracks. They would raise an army, attack each other, and their army would declare them in charge. So you continually need more men, and you continually need more money to pay them. So you have people coming into Rome that aren't Roman. You have this expansion of the army as it doubles and triples in size. And then you have them adding other metals to coins. You have them clipping coins, doing whatever they might be. By 270, Aurelian's silver coin is a bronze coin. There's no silver left in it. So I think you have to understand there's a lot of damage that gets done that leads up to that point.
So when you talk about, well, let's finish, Larry.
Sorry to cut you off.
No. I ask you. I wanted to hear that because that raises more questions for me. Because he says depopulation driven by moral degeneracy was a key factor in Rome's demise. Interestingly, history is repeating itself. The global left, not just Democrats, obsessed with sexual perversion and freedom to do, to quote Romans 1, what ought not be done, have like Greece and Rome before them declared war on children and families. He says J.D. Vance is right. Democrats hate children, families, and humans in general. Listen to the World Economic Forum's depopulation agenda. Listen to Kamala Harris parrot it, and we must be the pro-child, pro-family, pro-human party. And of course, he was referring to Dana Bash's interview of J.D. Vance and some of the things that he said there. So that's interesting that because you bring up the points there. I mean, there's a lot of things. Whenever a couple of weeks ago or a few months back, it kind of became a trending thing to say, every day men are thinking about the Roman Empire. Why did they say that? Why did that become a trend? What were they saying in saying that? What does that mean that men are thinking about the Roman Empire?
Well, I think there's kind of two parts to this. I think number one, it's kind of like a late stage empire thing where people are looking at, do we have something left or do we have a future? But I think the other bigger part of it is really the masculinity side of things. We've gotten rid of places for men in society. You know, like the idea of being masculine is looked down upon. So you look at how Rome was as a society. Was it a very masculine society? Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, there is an ability for someone to start out Even look at a guy like Pertinax, who's the emperor that takes over for Commodus. He was the son of a slave and eventually becomes emperor. So it was a society where there's an ability to start as no one and kind of create yourself into someone. And we're kind of losing a bit of that now for men, where there's not really a path to create a new future, to do something. And I think there's kind of the part of, does the country have a future, but do men as a group have a future?
Yeah, and you talk about, and that's true. I mean, we have emasculated, demasculated so much in our society. We've valued the, God, I hate using the term in this context, but we've kind of elevated and magnified the beta side of things, of this weakness. We were joking about that movie about this. It plants a seed in women who are going to go like, yeah, see, I've been around men. That could be construed as abusive or something like that. So this whole toxic masculinity culture that's out there, and to the point where we've really weakened ourselves as a culture, as a society, as a nation, because we've devalued the idea of strong men. The idea of a brute. I joke about testosterone being such a powerful hormone. For millennia of history, it's caused men to leave the cave and go out and club something and drag it back to the cave and either eat it or marry it, right? And so the idea now is that testosterone is this thing that is a dangerous thing. And the more of it you have, the more, we can put testosterone in our female children and let them, do all that kind of stuff. But men who have it, biological males that have it, become potentially dangerous. So, take me back a little bit here. I want to understand a little bit about this, because when we think about Rome, Roman Empire, I mean, we think about the twins suckling on the teat of the wolf, right? And then the foundation of Rome on the hills, and then we, there's mythology that's connected to it. But then there's, of course, Julius Caesar, et tu, Brute, and then there's various names we know, but there's, like you said, you got 47 emperors at one point in time who are trying to be emperor all at the same time. There's this constant struggle and fight for power. Walk me through a little bit the history of Rome. I mean, from where it started, because God, I could go back into the, from the Greeks and Rome, the Greek world domination, and then there's Rome. All roads lead to Rome. How did Rome, first of all, become so damn powerful?
Well, so first of all, I guess let me set the stage for talking about like what Rome was, because I think that's a major confusion a lot of people have, and I guess apologize to a lot of history people out there, because I'm gonna either skip something or make a mistake somewhere, and they're gonna have me for lunch in the comments here. So I'll put that out there first to begin with. So Rome, I think the thing people have to understand is it has over 1,000-year history, and it's founded in 753 BC as a kingdom. The first king of Rome is a guy named Romulus. Historically, he's the least likely to have actually existed, because he's kind of this guy of, well, we don't know who to attribute all these things to, so I guess Romulus did it. So he's the first of 7 kings. The kingdom falls when the final king, Tarquin the Proud, is actually assassinated by a guy named Brutus. Funny enough, Brutus is the same family that will later assassinate Julius Caesar. So in 509, the kingdom becomes a republic. So that's 509 BC. So from 509 BC to 31 BC, we have the Republic. And then from 31 BC to 476 AD in the West, because you're going to have a lot of people that say Rome lasted until 1453. Well, that's correct. In the East, it did last until 1453. They would have called themselves Romans. But that's the end of the Western empires, 476 AD. So that's kind of the land we're working on here in terms of what Rome is. In terms of where it's founded, Romans like to trace themselves to the Trojans of the Trojan War from Greek mythology. There's this guy named Aeneas, and he leaves the battle after losing the battle of the Trojan War with his father Anchises on his back. And they end up in an area in Italy called Alba Longa. And Alba Longa, much later on, will have these 2 brothers. The first is named Numentor, and Numentor is the current king, and he has a brother named Amulius. And my history teacher always used to say, the evil Amulius. Always made me laugh. Amulius overthrows Numentor. Numentor has a daughter named Rhea Silva. Rhea Silva has the 2 sons you spoke about, Romulus and Remus. And there's this prediction that 2 brothers will overthrow Amulius. So he has Romulus and Remus killed by floating them in a basket down a river. Sounds very similar to other things we've heard of.
Mhm.
It turns out then a she-wolf, as you talk about, picks up these two kids and suckles them. Now, the word for she-wolf and the word for prostitute in Latin are very similar, so we don't know if it was actually a prostitute or a she-wolf. Sounds more realistic it was a prostitute if it actually happened. These two
Right.
brothers then kill their uncle Amulius and put their grandfather, Numitor, back on the throne. And after that point in time, they really don't know what to do with themselves. So they go across to Italy and decide they're going to found a city. And there's many different thoughts on how Remus actually dies, but the most popular is that they get in a fight and that Romulus kills Remus and becomes the guy to actually found the city of Rome. So that's kind of how we get there in terms of how Rome is. There's, I guess, a lot of other sections we can go, but I don't want to get too long-winded on here, Chad. So we could discuss Caesar. We could discuss other things. Where'd you want to go next, man?
Hey, listen, I love it because, first of all, the sheer fact that, of course, again, you're practicing this and you've got a disciplined mind there and you've studied. But the fact that you can pull these names is amazing to me. I see through a glass darkly. You know what I mean? Trying to remember half the stuff. But the direction I want to go is, so Rome becomes this world power. It becomes an empire. It starts out. Correct me if I'm wrong here, because I've said this in the past. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Rome, they started as a republic.
That's correct. Well, a kingdom, then a republic.
Kingdom and a republic, and they become an empire. Mm-hmm. It's ruled by a dictatorial Caesar. And then in the correlation that I'm drawing here is the idea of America, right? We started out as this idea of a republic. We've kind of devolved now into this democracy where we've heard over and over again so many people saying a threat to democracy, a threat to democracy. And you go online, people immediately say we're a constitutional republic. But we have kind of devolved into a mob rule in some regards in this push for the cities of America to rule over the rest of the nation because that's where the mob and the massive population tends to be. There's this fight against the Electoral College. We see that Kamala Harris, who has not received a single primary vote ever, gets all of the delegates that are handed to her by Joe Biden resigning. And so the point is, I see us headed down the road from republic to empire, similar to the way that Rome did, and it becomes very dictatorial at that point. What are your thoughts on that assessment?
So I think the difficult thing about it is, first of all, history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme in a lot of ways. And the thing I've really struggled with, Chad, is I've been having these discussions now for close to a year. We really started having these discussions in February about where we're at in Rome. And my viewpoint on things has developed and changed dramatically in the last year. I've been talking about Rome's 3rd century crisis since February. Because if you look at it, inflation, central power crumbling, and that is a big thing we're dealing with. You have parts of the empire that start to break off in the 3rd century. But I think if you look at where we are as a republic, I think America hasn't been a functional republic in a very, very long time. And I think you actually have the progressive era to blame for that. Because if you look at it, in 1913, it's a very pivotal year. You have 3 things that happen. You have, over the Christmas break, the Federal Reserve Act passes. You have the Income Tax Amendment passes, and you also have the 17th Amendment passes. The 17th Amendment is something not many people talk about, but it's actually very pivotal in how our system functions. That's where state legislatures would actually decide who's going to be in the Senate. So now the House and the Senate actually they serve the same exact purpose, right? Because they're elected by the people. And in 2020, it actually would have been important that the states would have had a voice, that the state legislatures could have something to say about an election, but they couldn't because of how the election was done. So I think we've really been an empire for quite a while. But if you look at kind of the cosplay that's happening in the political sphere, they're playing out the fall of a republic as well. Because if you look at what happened to Julius Caesar, good guy or bad guy, it kind of doesn't matter as much. If you actually look at how his opponents handled him, they actually helped to create the situation which caused the fall of the actual republic. So I think we're really seeing parts of both of these things go on at once. And that's the real concern to me is, where does this lead? To me, you have one thing happen, and sure, you might change from a republic to an empire, whatever it might be, but you have 2 things happening at once, and that's civilization shifting. And that's the really big concern to me.
In what way? What do you think in terms of civilization shifting? How is it? How do you see it shifting?
Well, I see, because if you look at in 476, the Western Empire ceased to be, and it becomes a bunch of little different kingdoms. You have the Italian kingdoms, you have the Gallic kingdoms, you have these different things that pop up. And I think what you could be seeing is, and this is once again not to be a doomer, but I think you could see not really a future of America being a United States of America anymore because of this breakdown you're seeing politically. It really takes us in a bad direction. Once we don't have a currency that we can do much with, and once we have people that have continued to come across our borders illegally that no longer identify as Americans, but they're taking part in this system, well, it's not good for the direction of where things go as a country.
Yeah, and what you were saying earlier is so scary and eerily true of where we're sitting today, where you said that you had these Caesars, that their power was derived from their ability to build a military or an army behind them. We have however many millions of illegals that have entered into our country at this stage with an open southern border. And now you have certain places that are saying, hey, we'll grant you citizenship with military service. There are certain states that are already allowing illegals to serve in law enforcement. These are people who have not assimilated. They have no association to the United States of America. They didn't come here with the intention of being a part of a melting pot or to embrace a constitutional way of thinking or living. They're not interested in any of those types of things. They don't know our history. They don't know our way of life. They don't know our language in many cases. And yet we have the governing powers that be and bureaucrats who are placing them in spots of authority with actual strength and might of power. In the case of the military, that's a pretty significant thing. Do you see a correlation in that, in what's happening with, it's similar to the Caesars that are sort of raising up a strong arm and a long arm of their own bureaucratic law. What do you think?
Well, I think you can definitely see that with how a lot of these guys with the military industrial complex behind them are kind of making decisions not for the people that elected them. They're making decisions for their own power and for whatever power base that basically supports them. But I think you also have the issue as well of, are you familiar with the Praetorian Guard, Chad?
A little bit.
So the Praetorian Guard, they start under the first Emperor Augustus, and their real role is protecting the emperor. But that changes dramatically under Rome's third emperor, a guy named Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus. You would have known him as Caligula, is what he's called in history. Caligula actually means little boot or bootykins, because his father used to dress him up in a little military uniform as a kid and parade him around military camps.
No wonder he stayed pissed off his whole life.
Well, and you have to think about, too, like, just the psychological effects of a guy like Caligula. The Emperor Tiberius before him kills Caligula's mother, kills his brother, kills his other brother, and then basically brings him to the island of Capri, where Tiberius was kind of doing some terrible things with children at that point in time. So you're going to be a little bit messed up if that happens to you. But anyway, when he becomes emperor at 24, he has about a 4-year reign of just chaos. And the Praetorian Guard looks at this and they say, well, we have to protect the Republic or whatever this is. And they actually assassinate him. And they name his stuttering uncle, Claudius, to be his replacement. And that's kind of a giant shift in how the Praetorian Guard is throughout history. And then they start to decide, we're the power behind the power. It's not just the people protecting the president, but they're also handling a lot of intelligence. They're the long arm of the emperor in this point in time. So I think you have that issue as well, where the Praetorian Guard starts to function almost like this Roman deep state of deciding, like, if this person is allowed to be in power, we're going to allow that. So I think that's also another concern I have, along with the way politicians are currently operating, as you said, like tiny Caesars doing whatever it is they want to do.
Yeah, because I think the average American citizen out there, at least the ones that are aware, I had a conversation with somebody just last night, and they said, I'm not sure that 90% of the country is truly aware of what's happening in our country or paying attention. I have been dismayed by the lack of knowledge when it comes to just civics. You mentioned the 17th Amendment. The average person does not know what the 17th Amendment was. They have no clue what the 17th Amendment was. They have no clue that it was state legislatures that determined the Senate.
Well, they were trying to solve a problem, by the way, which I might add. Right. They were trying to solve a problem of corruption, naming, whoever they wanted to be in the place in the Senate. Right. So I think you could solve that without taking it away.
Yeah, but the average person, they don't have a clue about that. And again, a lot of times with the best of intentions of trying to solve problems, you're creating another type of thing that creates a bigger problem, right? You have, and again, were they really trying to solve a problem after 9/11? They come up with the Patriot Act, which is, I was going through the airport yesterday and I'm looking at the TSA and I go, none of you are constitutional. None of you should be here. None of this should exist. Nobody has the right to grab my crotch in the airport. I shouldn't have to be, metal detected or anything else to do this. You create a bigger problem by trying to find a solution, right? And so that was one of those things, but it's concerning to me that people, by and large, they don't know history. They don't know their own history. And we don't even have a long history. We're just talking about 248 years at this stage in the game. You're talking about 1,000 years, arguably longer, of the Roman Empire and how it busted into factions. The fear that I have is you're right. There are all these little power players that are out there. And the average American citizen feels like, why do I want to get involved with the election process? My ballot doesn't count. There's ballot harvesting, there's mail-in ballots, there's dead people voting, there's illegals potentially voting. Why do I even want to get involved in this thing? Because they just anticipate. For instance, I'll use again Kamala Harris. I had people who pushed back on me when I said she's never received a single vote. They said, well, she was on the ticket with Joe Biden. She was the logical person to be named. And I was like, yeah, but you didn't vote for her to be the president. You didn't vote for that. You voted for her to be the vice president. That's not the way that works. And so this idea that people think, you know what? I don't have any power. I'm just going to trust that it's going to all work out, right? But civilizations fall. Civilizations crumble because it'd be one thing if there were benevolent, nice, honest people who were in power. But you look at history, and that's simply not the case. You give people power, and they're corrupt. Yeah. They're evil people. They're the Caligulas of the world who, maybe you were abused growing up, but Caligula grows up to be a horrible, horrible human being, right? So I'm like, it'd be one thing if we had these benevolent benefactors or these benevolent dictators that were over us that honestly cared about their people, but they care about greed, power, and money, and they covet those things, and they're willing to sacrifice us in order to get it.
Well, I think because politics, I don't think really at the highest level doesn't always attract the best of us, right? And I think that's the problem. If you look at what the founding fathers wanted, I actually wrote a post on X about this morning. They were hoping for something more like jury duty. Like that's what they hoped political office would be, because you look at somebody like John Adams, and John Adams goes back to running a law firm in Braintree, Massachusetts after he's president. Yeah. What we're having now is a political class, which there becomes such a divide between them and everyone else. And if you look at kind of the last 100-ish years of the Roman Republic, there's what's called the Roman Revolution. So that's 133 to 31. You have these two groups, and they're both groups that are rich people. So trust me, it's not like it's rich versus poor or anything what it might be. But you have the optimates, which are the kind of old money, powerful people. And you have the people that care more about, the public good. So you have this really difficult civil war that kind of goes about for almost 100 years between them. Law breaks down, and that's what lets somebody like Julius Caesar walk into. He was really just a man of his era and just better than the ones around him. So he happens to be the one that seizes power, but they were all trying to seize power.
There's been talk in recent days about this equivocation of Donald Trump being another Julius Caesar, right? We'll get into that in a second. Yeah. But why is Julius Caesar the guy? Like, when you think of the Roman Empire, when you think of Caesars, you think of Julius. You think of Julius. Why is he the guy? Why is he kind of the pinnacle, the be-all, end-all? Because people can name different ones, Caligula, Nero, different ones throughout history. But why? Why Julius Caesar? What was so important about him?
Well, he was just the best tactician of his era. And the reason you think of him really has nothing, well, it has something to do with him, but it actually has more to do with his adopted son, which we know is Augustus. Because Augustus is the one that actually establishes the empire. But if you look at somebody like Caesar, he's the man of his era. So as I mentioned, 133 to 31 BC is what's known as the Roman Civil War. So in the early 130s, you have these two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus. And they're what's called populares. So they're more of that group for the people that I was talking about. And they're trying to bring in more populist reforms. The Senate doesn't like that. So they kill Tiberius Gracchus by taking the legs of stools in the Senate and beating him to death. Not too long after that, his brother Gaius, who kind of has a little bit more of a streak in himself where he would love to be king, takes up his brother's mantle and also tries to do these popular reforms, but more from the perspective of giving himself power. They raise the Senate raises up a group against him out of fear. He wants to commit suicide, but actually has a slave kill him because he's kind of too afraid to kill himself. So that kind of opens up the door of the way things work. Not long after that, you have a Roman general named Gaius Marius. And the highest office in Rome was what's called the consulship. And you would have 2 of them every year, and they would rule for just a year because they didn't want one person to have the power for too long. So Marius, you're supposed to only hold that consulship once every 10 years. He holds the consulship 7 times. And he did not live to be 70 years old because they use the idea of, well, we have these 2 military forces, the Cimbri and also this guy named Jugurtha, and we're in such fear of military coming against us, we got to continue to give Marius power. So then one of his subgenerals, this guy named Sulla, comes in and he gets upset with Marius. He creates this process in 82 to 78 called proscription. The first day, 80 names pop up on a tablet in the forum, and those people's heads are to be brought to Sulla, and he'll reward them. The next day, it's 200 names, and this continues for a period of time, where Sulla actually declares himself dictator. The dictator was an office that was supposed to last for 6 months because they thought one person could solve a problem faster than 2 people.
So there was actually an office.
It was an office,
and
that's why George Washington is always called the American Cincinnatus. Cincinnatus was this Roman farmer that basically takes up the office of dictator for 6 months, solves the situation, and lays down his office. So it was kind of seen as the Roman optimum.
Yeah, which is one of those benevolent dictators, as I was, but that's rare, right?
So then he holds the dictatorship for 4 years, and people are kind of unsure when he's going to lay that down. So we're seeing from 130 through this period now, we're in the 80s, law has broken down, right? There's really not a great structure for a guy like Julius Caesar to walk into in 59 BC when he becomes consul, and his co-consul and he don't see eye to eye. It's this guy named Marcus Biblius. And the first thing Caesar wants to do is land reform. He wants to give land to veterans as kind of a more populist thing to do. Biblius and the guy behind him, this guy named Cato the Younger, don't agree with that. So Caesar actually has the ability to take this vote to the people, and he does that. And the people actually vote for land reforms. Biblius tries to do something about this. Cato tries to do something about this. And Biblius is chased into his home and doesn't leave his home for a year. Typically, the year of the consuls would be the year of those 2 people. So it would be like Caesar and Biblius. What people end up calling it is the consulship of Julius and Caesar, because basically he's the guy in charge for the entire year. After that, after his consulship, he then goes for 9 years to Gaul and kills somewhere around about 1 million people. But he enlarges the Roman Empire. After that, his enemy Cato that we talked about earlier says, well, Julius, you have like 10 years of crimes to come back here to Rome to answer for that I could put you in jail for. So then he knows if he can become a consul again, they can't actually go after him for crimes. So he petitions the Senate to run for office in absentia, because Rome is a in-person political situation. So if you want to be in office, you have to be in the city of Rome to get elected. But he's thinking, if I show up, well, they're going to press charges against me, which may be real or imagined. I don't know. So the Senate agrees to this. Cato blocks it. And Julius Caesar then crosses the Rubicon with 1 legion. And Cato, Pompey, and all Caesar's enemies actually flee the city of Rome and just let him have the city. So we talk about Julius Caesar taking over the city of Rome. They actually kind of called this bluff, and they ran away when kind of the push came to shove. So he was the smartest tactician of his era. And then when he's assassinated in 44, he actually adopts this guy named Gaius Octavius in his will, and Gaius Octavius becomes Caesar, or Julius Caesar Augustus. And that kind of becomes the guy that creates the whole thing. So Caesar was really just the smartest tactician of his era that called their bluff when push came to shove. And then once there's kind of not really a republic left, it makes the perfect situation for a brilliant tactician like Augustus. I apologize that was long-winded, Chad, but it was a lot to get to.
No,
man.
Trust me. No, trust me. I love it, because for me, putting it all in that context helps, because, people tend to think of these disembodied names that are out there, but these were real people.
Yes.
And they existed and they did things. Like you said, he goes to Gaul, the Gallic Wars. I mean, Julius Caesar, they wrote about it. I mean, it's a very popular piece of ancient literature there of his adventures.
Well, and it's firsthand as well. It's written in a very interesting way where he talks about Caesar did this and Caesar did that.
You go out and kill 1 million people. That's pretty. It's pretty. It's quite a legacy. I'll put it that way. It's quite the legacy. And then to sit down and write about it, which again I won't get into it, but it's interesting to me that nobody
too, because he's actually writing it as he's doing it, because he also has to convince the people in Rome what he's doing is a good thing. So he's documenting it, but it's also a PR play at the same time.
So this is a bad dude. I mean, he's a bad dude, and a smart, as you say, tactician. I mean, everything he does is strategic. It's complex, but he's got it. It's thought out in the way he's doing it. Funny thing about world conquerors, whether it's Alexander or Julius or Napoleon or a guy like Hitler who wanted to do that, it's pretty interesting. These aren't dumb guys.
No, they're brilliant.
They're brilliant.
Brilliantly
they might be
evil,
a little
but
bit
brilliant.
Might be a little off in the head, but they really do have this idea for world domination, and they've got a plan figured out on how they're going to do it. There's these people who now want to equate Donald Trump with all of those people. Say, well, Donald Trump's just going to take over. We'll never have a republic left. He's a threat to democracy. He's a living embodiment of Hitler. He's a Nazi. He's all these various things. I don't know. I've been around Trump. I like Trump. I listen to Trump. Trump frustrates me sometimes with the things he says. I mean, the guy, he's a genius in terms of his ability to own a room and to sell and to just make the deal. But I'm like, I don't think that he is a Julius Caesar.
Well, right? He's never led a military force, which I think is one part of it. He's not leading legions into the city of D.C. as much as they want to compare January 6th to that. And then you also look at Julius Caesar. Like, Julius Caesar never relinquished power. Like, the Senate wanted him to lay down power and come to the city, and he did not do that. Trump may not have agreed with the results of 2020, but is he in office? No, he's not in office. He agreed with, kind of the process and how it goes.
Yeah. It's fascinating to me how people use history. And that's why it's important, so important what you do. And you're so multifaceted. You have so many different things. It's easy to get off on the Roman Empire thing, which is beautiful to me, just fascinating. But people use history. How do I want to phrase this? People want to use history to kind of back up their claims, even if it's fuzzy or revised history, right? They want to come up with a history that fits their narrative, that fits their agenda today. Are you seeing that? Is that problematic in kind of where we are in terms of how we think through things? We talk about history repeats itself, but it's hard to know if you keep revising history, right?
Well, I think that's the major thing I've learned through these conversations I've been having over the last year is not that people know, something wrong about Rome. I find they know almost nothing. And I think that becomes very interesting. When you can take away someone's past, you can decide what their future is, right? There's a song by Rage Against the Machine, and it's like, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the future or present controls the future. So I think it's really interesting. If you can tell people who they are, what they believe, what they have to think, well, then they're operating off of bad information, right? It puts you, the future you create now is based off of something that wasn't true. And I think often when you don't know what you've lived through, it's very easy to slide into a lot of the exact same things. And I think to me, that's the biggest concern is we just have no awareness. Does that mean everyone needs to be an expert in these things? No. But I think we need to know in some basics how the world before us has functioned, or the government and the powerful can do the exact same things they've done to us in the past, because it does not attract the best of us.
Man, it doesn't. And as you alluded to earlier, the people who get up in the upper echelons of power in government, those typically are not the kind of people. That's why, hey, you tend to get a lot of attorneys, a lot of lawyers. You get a lot of people that are in those things where you go, God, I don't like attorneys. I mean, some of my best friends are attorneys, and I'll go out and have a drink with them, and I'll be like, I don't like you. Like, you're probably going to be charging me for hours just because I'm sitting here having a cocktail with you. But these are the people who end up running our country, right? And you don't get the best of the best that are up there. You talked about, you literally went and made it a field of study and a focus of study, talking about the worship of Roman emperors. Mm-hmm. These people were revered as gods, right? I mean, kind of a divine purpose kind of thing. They saw themselves as what? I mean, was it? Did they really truly see themselves as divine, or was it just they had so much power, or they just had so much power that they said, basically everybody's going to bow?
I think it's a control mechanism too, because if you even look at Augustus, the first emperor, on his deathbed, he quotes Greek tragedy. He says, "If I have played my part well, give me a round of applause." And people are like, "Well, what part were you playing through your life? Did we really meet the real Augustus?" Because if you look at him, the guy that wins the Roman Civil War and the guy that establishes the empire are very different. And I think it's important to understand that. But if you look at a lot of the tools they use, it's very interesting because, for example, coinage was a major way that you would run propaganda on people. You'd have an emperor's face on one side, and then maybe something important from Roman history, whether it be Romulus or Augustus or whatever it might be, because the main usage of money was actually to pay the military. So you wanted the soldiers to realize, okay, this guy is all powerful. So that's one part of it. But the thing they do as well is they try to tie themselves to characters from mythology. And Augustus was very, very good at this. They have a family connection to the goddess Venus. The Julii clan, which is Julius Caesar's family, like to claim they were descended from the goddess Venus. So that's kind of one track that Julius Caesar was running that Augustus is observing. The other thing that I think is really interesting, and it's the way I actually got interested in Rome, is I was obsessed with Alexander the Great in undergrad. You should see my office. I look like a total nut job. I have busts of Alexander the Great. I have 50 books. But there's this one really weird, obscure article I read where after the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, Augustus goes and prays before the sarcophagus of Alexander the Great, because Alexander the Great had actually achieved worship in the East. So he's basically saying, if I grant this person divinity, I'm basically showing how much I care for that. And he starts carrying himself as an Alexander. So I think that's really important to understand in his acts and his verbiage and the things he does. So he tries to position himself that way. The other thing that happens is after Julius Caesar dies, there's a comet that goes across the sky. And Augustus claims it's his deified father going to the heavens to take his position with the gods. So then, well, if my dad's God, chances I'm God too, right? Like it's a really, he does a very good job at this. Another thing is the statues. He puts statues of himself across the entire empire, but he's never older than about 30 to 35 years old, because if you're divine, you're never going to age, right? Though in his later years, he's not a very healthy man. So I think a lot of these tools are used to people. Now, he doesn't claim to be divine, though he claims to be descendant from divine. You're going to have down the road, gosh, I'm trying to think of how many emperors this is down the road. But anyway, in the first kind of 10 or 15 emperors, you have this guy named Domitian. If you've seen the series out there on Peacock right now, for those about to die, Domitian is the son of the main character in that movie. And Domitian actually has the Senate declare him a god and actually has the people offer offerings to him. So it doesn't take us very long to get there, though I really don't think these politicians believed what they were telling people. I think it was more of a tool for them, because even a guy like Julius Caesar, one of the first big offices he runs for is Pontifex Maximus, and that's the chief priest of Rome. And that gave you a lot of power. And that's before he's ever dictator, before he's ever consul. So I think for them, politics and religion were very powerful things. And I really don't think they believed as much of they want you to believe.
So a lot of it, as you said, was propaganda.
Yes.
Even the coins, I mean, that's sort of like your fake news of the day, right? I'm going to show you, and we're going to literally emboss this coin. We're going to mint this coin, and we're going to tell you how great I am, whether I am or not. We're going to give you a little piece of history just by looking at the picture on this coin as well.
Well, you have to think about people used money every single day, right? So if they're seeing your face in that way every single day, that's brilliant propaganda just by, going to the forum and paying for something.
Yeah. Do you think that we've, gosh, there's so many correlations. Do you think that that's kind of where we are in the sense that we elevate these politicians in America today to the point of almost a worship? I mean, you look at we're losing family members, we're losing close friends, we're arguing online, we're at each other's throats, we're ready to divide the country. We talk about Texas seceding, we talk about convention of states, we talk about all these different things. Have we elevated these people to a point where it's just absolutely destroyed our country, similar to the way that that these people have demanded worship in Rome.
Well, I think the left is the best example of this, right? Because it's kind of this giant unthinking thing, and you have to believe the dogma, which has kind of replaced religion and spirituality in this country. Whether it's, you have to believe that a man is a woman, or you have to believe it's very similar to 1984, right? Where we're telling people one thing is the opposite of it. So I think, yes, that's the big problem that's happened is it's become more of a celebrity contest. It's become more of, who can get the most votes rather than who has the best points. And I think the left is the best example of this because it's kind of this giant unthinking Leviathan that just gets behind somebody and pushes them. Well, you look at what's happened with Harris. For some reason, the media and everybody else has just gotten behind this woman that 4 years ago, I don't even think she got 3% of the vote in the primary. So it's like, how is this person now anointed?
Yeah. And just a matter of 6 weeks ago had a 27% approval rate, which is the lowest modern approval rate for a vice president. It was terrible. And now they're setting her up like a messiah.
She's on the cover of Time today, Chad. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Even Joe Biden, back when Joe Biden was still technically in the race, everybody was saying, we're voting for the administration. They were literally saying, we're not voting for the man, we're voting for the administration, which is basically saying we're voting for the bureaucrats, the people who aren't elected, the appointed people. Those are the ones we're wanting.
Well, and the one interesting part of word salad about that, too, and I haven't seen this done in any other presidential campaign, is they've always called it the Biden-Harris campaign or the Biden-Harris administration. Which they've never called it the Bush-Cheney administration. It was the Bush administration, or it was the Obama administration. So that's a very interesting piece of word salad. A lot of people didn't notice.
That is profound that you bring that up. That is, I have not thought of that, but that is very profound that you say that because you're right. That's never been done. Then now you have the rhetoric of vote blue no matter who, and these types of things, which again brings us back to, as you said, the left as a mass have just gotten into party speak, and we're going to stick together no matter what. Which again, it goes back to whatever it takes. We're not voting for Donald Trump. Okay, we hate this man so much. You could literally put a throw pillow on the ticket, and we would vote for that.
I was at the county fair the other day, and there was a woman wearing a shirt that said "Childless Cat Ladies for Kamala." I'm like, you're kidding me! Like you're insulting yourself just to say that you have to support this person.
I was having a conversation with a lady. I was in a shoppers club. I was in a Sam's, okay, and was having a conversation with a lady, it's a black lady, and she said, "Don't tell me you're voting for Trump." And I said, "I am going to vote for Donald Trump." And she goes, "I'm so afraid of that man." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because he is going to hurt us. Like he's going to hurt blacks. It's going to be bad. It's going to set us back." And I said, "Why are you saying that? Like, what do you think he's going to do to cause harm to the black community?" And she said, "Oh, it's just I've heard." And I said, "What have you heard and who have you heard it from?" She couldn't tell me. She couldn't tell me. I quickly reminded her. I said, Donald Trump dated a black woman. He funded Jesse Jackson's campaign. I said he gave money to Kamala Harris's reelection campaign twice. I said the guy he fixed up city parks in urban areas. He won the Rosa Parks. So he was given the Rosa Parks Award. He was best friends with Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Don King, Muhammad Ali. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm like, where are you even coming up with this stuff? When you look at the track record of what he did for black communities and historically black communities, historically black colleges and universities while he was in office. He's already been in office for 4 years, and he didn't do those things. What makes you think he's going to do it this time? So again, the party speak, this fear of he's going to be a Caesar, or he's going to be a czar, or he's going to be a Kaiser, all these things coming from the same word, he's going to be a dictator, right?
Well, I think the trouble I have with that, Chad, and I don't know if this has been difficult for you too, is I find that when people have that level of fervent belief, you can give them all those facts and pieces of data and they just can't do it. I saw a video on X the other day where I think it was a trans person or something that said that Trump was going to take their bank account. And it's like, wait, why? like where does that even... So you can't have a discussion where you're talking about data because they just believe it almost on faith only.
Yeah. They're afraid of the Caesar, man. They're afraid of the Caesar, which is why they're willing to put a knife in his back. I don't think the attempts on his life are done. I think there's going to be more. What happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, July 13th. I think that was just the start. And again, when you build a rhetoric of fear of someone becoming that all powerful who's going to take everything away from your bank account to your freedom, you awaken a leviathan of crazies out there who believe that shit, and they're willing to take the pot shots at him. And then Joe Biden comes out and says, we have to tone down the rhetoric of violence. But then he goes on whatever the Sunday news show just this past weekend saying he's going to be a danger to our country if he gets reelected. The similarities that are there, this fight for power, remind me so much of, as you say, the things you say about the Roman Empire. It really is frightening. It really is frightening. We're living in scary times, man. I don't know if the country can recover. I really don't. I don't know that the country can ever come back together. What are your thoughts? I mean, give me an idea. Rome fell. Does America fall? Is it inevitable at this point?
So there's part of me that's discouraged and part of me that's really encouraged, because here's the thing you have to look at is, we can have these conversations on Rumble. We can have these conversations on X. Romans couldn't do that. Their world was just disappearing and going away. So we actually have the ability to do something about that. And I think as well, the more conversations I have, the more people say, like, it's the local level. Like, that's where we actually need to care about things. It's getting involved in your community. It's getting involved in your school board, whatever it might be. And you even see how, like, things got turned around in Virginia and it allowed somebody like Glenn Youngkin to get elected because parents did something on a local level. So I think there's actually a lot of hope in me right now as a dad of 3 little girls that, like, I can do something about this. I can change this, but it's not as much at the national level as you think it is. It's getting involved in your town, taking care of people, taking care of your friends. I was talking to my wife about this the other day. There was somebody in our local community that the husband's stuck in the hospital and they're trying to pay for stuff and whatever. So what do we do as a group in our community? We raise money to try and help that person. Like, that's what you do. But I think we've been told that daddy government's going to take care of you and you don't need to take care of your friends and your family. And that's just not the way, man. So I'm very encouraged actually by the openness of communication. Now, what I'm not encouraged by, and that's what kills empires, is our money. They're just spending money out of control and they're so far over their skis. Now, can something be done about that? I actually think it can. If I was reading more recently about Emperor Constantine, he's not the first person to make Christianity the official religion of the empire, but he's the first Christian emperor. And he actually puts Rome back on a gold standard. And that's one of the main reasons that the Eastern Empire survives. Now, he doesn't do it all at once. Every year he mints a few more gold coins. And that's how you could actually do it, is slowly getting it so the money is worth something again. The problem is our money is worth nothing. We're over our skis. And then eventually, when the dollar isn't trusted by the rest of the world and it's no longer the petrodollar, well, then we're at hyperinflation. So we have to handle our money or we're in trouble.
Yeah. I mean, and listen, all you got to do is go look at the spot price of gold right now. It's as high as it's ever been, which tells you what's going on with cash currency. It's becoming more and more worthless. Next time I go to Rome, I want to go with you, okay? And you got to be my tour guide on that deal. It's fascinating stuff, dude. It really is. I appreciate your voice so much, Jeremy. I want more and more people listening to you because it's so relevant. History it's amazing. It's so much of it is just so relevant to where we are today. Because again, circumstances and situations change, but human nature never does. I mean, people are people. Man's inhumanity to man has been going on for as long as recorded history can tell us, and I guarantee it was going on before that too. I mean, since Cain picked up a rock and killed Abel with it, here we are. And I think that you're speaking a lot of common sense and critical thinking into our world, and I appreciate what you're doing. What's going on with you? Where can people find you? With the podcast, are you getting out? Are you doing any public speaking? I know you have. Are you doing, what kind of engagements you got going on?
Yeah.
How can people find you?
So a lot of my speaking has actually been on PR. We did a conference in Thailand not too long ago. I was at Ukraine before they were blowing it up, and been in Mexico and some other places. So do a lot of speaking. It's typically about PR because what my company does, Command Your Brand, is we're a PR firm for the podcast and new media space. We only focus on new media because I think it has the only thing with value left out there in the world. So we facilitate conversations just like this. So we're over at commandyourbrand.com. I am at Jeremy Ryan Slate in all platforms. My parents named me after an actor. So if you look for Jeremy Slate, you're likely going to find some old guy with white hair and not me. That's why I'm Jeremy Ryan Slate in all platforms.
Well, I want your input as well for the things that we're doing here, because you and I were talking off air. It's hard to push through the clouds right now because social media has us so throttled. It's crazy, and it's universal across the board. So, the ability to be heard anymore is getting harder and harder. Yeah. There's so many voices vying for that space, but now you have the big tech overlords, the big tech gods that are determining who's getting heard and who's not. So keep up the fight, man. I appreciate what you're doing, and I want people to listen to you, reach out to you, find out more about you. You're an author as well. You got a couple of books out there.
Yeah, my first book is called Extraordinary. I wanted to take a look at what makes people the best at what they do. So I've talked to Super Bowl champions, World Series champions, one of the only guys to win the Indy 500 4 times. So to me, I just want to look at what makes you great. And then our most recent one is about commanding your brand, which is what we try to help people with.
I love it. Jeremy, I want to get you back sometime, okay?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And I know you're making the circuit. I see you around all the time. So keep up the good work. I want to get you back, and I appreciate you so much. JeremyRyanSlate.com. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Got it. All right, brother. I appreciate you so much, man. Take care of yourself. Keep in touch. Let's change the world together. Try to figure out a way to do it.
Sounds great.
Hey, for the rest of you guys out there, y'all follow Jeremy. Make sure you keep up with what he's got to say. It's such good stuff, and I appreciate y'all. If you've enjoyed this conversation, let us know it. Leave us a 5-star rating. Leave us a review. We certainly appreciate that. WatchChad.com. That is the most vain web address on the planet. It sounds like an OnlyFans. It does. But you've heard me say it before. I am my only fan. WatchChad.com has my live schedule. It's got places you can shop, places you can, there's a link on there that says podcast. You could send it out to your friends and family, and it's everywhere they can find the podcast for the most part. All the major links out there, both audio and video. Send it out to people. I would appreciate you sharing this show. In the meantime, take care of yourselves. It's a crazy world out there. Keep your head on a swivel and be aware. And know that I, for one, love you. And we will talk to you next time. God bless. Bye.